Tonight, back together again. Families kept apart by closed COVID borders reunited. More New South Wales restrictions are easing, but there's concern about one new case. Big bang or a fizzer, whatever the New Year fireworks look like, they will be a toned-down affair. The mastermind of the execution-style killing of a teenager as he slept inside his Sydney home, guilty. The biggest fine in history, Westpac's $1.3 billion penalty for breaching anti-money laundering laws. A car plunges 20 metres off a cliff at Newcastle, injuring a woman and her baby down below. And we reveal the huge price gaps between petrol stations and how you can save hundreds of dollars a year.
This is 10 News First Sydney with Sandra Sully.
Good evening. There is much to celebrate tonight with a swathe of restrictions on weddings, schools and kids' sport all being relaxed in New South Wales. While there is one new case of COVID-19 to report tonight, it does follow 3 days of no community transmission. And there were scenes of joy today as our border with South Australia was flung open and families were reunited.
They are hugs 6 months in the making. And at Adelaide Airport today, the long wait was finally over.
It's the first time I've touched him. Oh, I'm overwhelmed.
The first flight in and a granddad's first kiss.
I didn't think I'd cry, but it just came.
Thank you to your Premier. It's wonderful.
It's very exciting. This made me all emotional.
As the passengers poured out, Denise Pride was scanning the crowd for her grandson. Little Luca is 8 months old.
It's very precious. I'm a bit shaky. I'm so excited.
It's the first time he's met his Adelaide clan.
Seen plenty of shots of him and movies, but hey. Like I found out yesterday and booked a flight as soon as I could.
At the Sydney departure gate, boarding passes were like golden tickets.
I go down and see my girlfriend. I haven't seen her for 7 months now, so it was her birthday yesterday.
When the border announcement was made, Qantas put on daily flights between Sydney and Adelaide, but there's been so much demand. Today's flight already at 85% full. They've had to put on another 3 flights a week. And as the plane taxied, the celebrations began.
We love Adelaide! We won't let them down. We'll do everything we can in New South Wales to make sure we keep the virus under control.
Our state has now seen 3 days in a row with no community transmission. But late last night, a new case ended that streak. A man in his 50s in a disability support home in the Macarthur region. With a pre-existing condition, he's in intensive care in Campbelltown Hospital.
The source of the infection is under investigation.
Still today, more restrictions were relaxed. The one-parent rule for kids' sport scrapped.
As long as they practice social distancing, they follow the COVID safety plan.
Weddings can still only have 100 guests, but the happy couple can now dance with their entire bridal party up to 20 people. In schools, Term 4 will see the return of camps and excursions, orientation day and school music groups. Choirs are back on with groups of up to 5.
What comes out of our mouth when we talk or sing can be extremely dangerous as it carries the virus.
Ever so slowly, our freedoms and our families are returning. Daniel Sutton for 10 News First.
Coronavirus may have cast a shadow over 2020, but the Premier wants to avoid Sydney's famed New Year's fireworks fading to black, calling them a symbol of hope and a message to the world. The state government is working towards hosting some sort of public celebration, but what that looks like is far from decided.
98 days to go and so much is still in the air.
It will not be like any other New Year's Eve we have had. The vast majority of us will be watching from home.
Last week, the Lord Mayor hinted the crackers could be cancelled.
Well, I just think it's too difficult.
Today, Clover Moore met with the Tourism Minister about finding a bridge between celebration and COVID safety.
We think that the advice we've got from Police and Health says that we can proceed with this.
It's already agreed there'll be no 9 p.m. fireworks.
That it will be a very short display just at midnight.
We asked on Facebook whether they should go ahead, and from 1,000 responses, more than half said no.
Yeah, I think people definitely, and I'm in this group of people, we don't want to see what normally happens on New Year's Eve. None of us want to see the large crowds. None of us want to see breaching of the health orders, and I'm in that group.
One of the loudest voices against the fireworks has been Nationals leader John Barilaro. He believes it's unfair regional communities are being forced to cancel their major events, while Sydney could have its. But he's now on 4 weeks of leave, and negotiations are pushing on without him. Not only about New Year's, but also the cause of recent political fireworks, the koala habitat protection policy. 10 News First can reveal the Planning Minister and new Acting Deputy Premier have met twice in the past 2 days.
I'm confident we'll get a balanced outcome.
Having previously blamed the Premier for koala deaths after the bushfires, Jodie McKay has confirmed Labor is satisfied with the current policy.
We have no issue with the SEP as it stands, yeah.
Lachlan Kennedy for 10 News First.
An uncle hell-bent on revenge has been found guilty of masterminding the cold-blooded execution of a 15-year-old boy in Sydney's southwest 3 years ago. Abdul Abu Mahmoud paid $20,000 to a hitman to gun down Braden Dillon as he slept in his Glenfield home, all because he wanted to avenge the death of his nephew.
His tattoos say it all. An eye for an eye, revenge is a dish best served cold. Abdul Abu Mahmoud wanted to avenge the death of his nephew Adam and decided the target should be an innocent 15-year-old boy, gunned down as he slept.
This was an extremely heinous murder that involved a child, and this investigation has not concluded. The investigation is ongoing.
It was Good Friday 3 years ago when a hitman entered Braden's home and executed him in his bed. It was revenge a court has found for the death of Adam Abu Mahmoud, fatally stabbed in self-defence by Braden's older brother. Mr Abu Mahmoud wanted something done. He was not a person who would or could do it himself. Instead, the 35-year-old turned to Conrad Craig, a career criminal, a member of the notorious Brothers for Life gang, run by Bassem Hamzy. Craig has already been found guilty to pulling the trigger and initially agreed to testify against Abu Mahmoud. But when it came to giving his evidence in this trial, he reversed his position, stating he either acted alone or on the orders of Bassem Hamzy. But that was ultimately rejected by the judge. The murder of Braden Dillon was not what I could describe as Brothers for Life business, Justice Harrison said. There are ongoing court matters over the death, but at least for Braden's parents, they now know the man who masterminded it will face sentence.
And they are extremely satisfied with the result. Obviously, as the investigation still continues and the court matters still continue, there's still a long way for us to go, and we're only one step further in the quest for justice for Braden.
Ursula Hager for 10 News First.
Westpac has been hit by a record fine of $1.3 billion after admitting breaches on a scale never before seen in Australian corporate history. Its brazen failure to report suspect financial transactions has been linked to child exploitation, money laundering and potentially the financing of terrorism. Here's National Affairs editor Hugh Riminton.
For every Australian who's ever grizzled that banks are bastards, there was plenty of evidence today.
This extremely serious and enormous failure on the part of Westpac.
Westpac has admitted 23 million breaches of regulations and accepted a $1.3 billion fine, dwarfing the previous record corporate penalty for similar offences by the Commonwealth Bank. It makes this public servant
morning
our biggest banker buster yet.
This agreement reflects the seriousness and magnitude of compliance failings by Westpac.
The bank's brazen failure to report more than $11 billion in suspicious money movements has been linked to terrorism financing, tax evasion, money laundering and organised child sexual exploitation. Westpac boss Peter King has released a statement saying he'd like to apologise sincerely for the bank's failings. But some argue the bank got off lightly.
That works out to roughly $56 per money laundering offence.
Westpac today released to the stock exchange a 95-page statement of agreed facts. It is an extraordinary document full of admissions of legal and moral failings. but one example. At Westpac's parent bank, more than 19 million transactions were required by law to be reported to regulators. So how many were? 0. Police at last now have the information they need to roll up paedophile rings.
There have been some convictions, and the AFP are continuing to investigate those along with State and Territory Police.
The scandal stripped executives of bonuses and saw Westpac's boss Brian Hartzer and Chairman Lindsay Maxted shown the door. But there will be no criminal charges.
We don't believe that there's been criminal activity by the Westpac board.
In accepting the penalty, Westpac avoids the catastrophe of a public trial. But it's still up to the federal court to decide if the fine is big enough. Hugh Riminton for 10 News First.
It's been called the trial of the century and one of the most expensive in Australian criminal history. Now, after more than 20 years of fear and mystery, the Claremont serial killer has been revealed. Today, Bradley Robert Edwards was convicted of murdering 2 young women, but another family is still no closer to closure.
For more than 2 decades, he was known only as the Claremont Killer. Now he has a name, Bradley Robert Edwards.
I am satisfied, beyond reasonable doubt, that the accused was the killer of Miss Rimmer and Miss Glennon.
With those words delivered to a packed courtroom, Justice Stephen Hall closed 2 of the country's most notorious cold cases and shed light on the enigma of the dark who plunged Perth into a state of fear.
Bradley Edwards can now be called for what he is, a brutal rapist and a murderer.
After a marathon 7-month trial, the biggest ever in WA, crowds packed the district court for today's historic verdict. Behind the blacked-out windows of this prison van, 51-year-old Edwards, who was today convicted of abducting and killing 23-year-old Jane Rimmer and 27-year-old Kira Glennon after nights out in the wealthy suburb of Claremont in 1996 and 1997. Their bodies found dumped in bush at opposite ends of Perth. It's believed both women died after being stabbed in the neck. Their bodies provided vital clues that helped unmask their killer. Minuscule fibres matching Edwards' car seat covers and Telstra issue work pads. But it was Ms Glennon's fight for life that proved the crucial key. Found under her nails, a DNA profile that matched Edwards, clawed from him during the fatal attack.
I think you get some closure, but it's always going to be the same. No one's ever going to bring her back.
But the verdict is bittersweet for the family of Sarah Spears. While Justice Hall said propensity evidence showed it was likely she was also killed by Edwards, it couldn't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
My verdict is that you are not guilty.
18-year-old Sarah Spears was the first woman to vanish from Claremont after a night out in January 1996. Miss Spears' body has never been found, and with no physical evidence linking her to Edwards, her case was the hardest to prove.
We will never give up trying to locate Sarah.
But hope that she would one day be laid to rest is now fading. Edwards will be sentenced in December. Claire Durl for 10 News First.
Police are trying to piece together a baffling crime scene in Sydney's west where a young man was stabbed to death early this morning. His body was found in a park near his car, which had crashed into a creek, and the killers are still on the run.
A lifeless body found in a park metres from an abandoned car crashed into a creek.
It would have been some kind of altercation that led that vehicle to end up where it did.
The body of a man in his 20s was discovered in Banyara Reserve just before 8 a.m. with a large stab wound. He'd been dead for several hours. Police suspect the man may have been chased into the park before his car hit the creek.
About 7:30, 8 o'clock, I heard a lot of noise with cars, like screeching of a brake.
It's believed the driver made a run for it but didn't get far. Riot squad officers scanned the large crime scene for clues. 2 men who knew him were interviewed by police, but they're looking for others and need the public's help.
If they saw anything from between the hours of 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. in particular, to come forward.
As detectives try to piece together exactly what happened here this morning, forensics have spent the day mapping out tyre tracks leading from this street into the park. The victim was known to police, who believe it was a targeted hit.
His interactions with police recently do cause concern, but it also does point us in the direction of why he may have been in the area.
And why he met such a violent end. Leah Harris for 10 News First.
Police have tracked down and charged a 22-year-old over a shooting in Sydney's southwest last month that left another man seriously injured. 29-year-old Mark Shamo was shot 5 times in the leg and stomach after reportedly being chased down by a group in a targeted attack. Authorities are still searching for a further 2 perpetrators. Now, you may have noticed some fluctuations at the Bowser lately, and you'd be right, with a whopping 40-cent price gap across the city. There is some good news, though, for drivers, with petrol prices expected to plummet.
It's the same petrol, but the prices are drastically different.
Towards the city, maybe at 10 cents more than the west, so yeah, it makes a difference.
And since COVID, it's been really cheap, and now it's gone up again.
New data suggests the price range across the city is huge. According to the Field Check app, there's a 40-cent difference in petrol prices across Sydney.
A huge price discrepancy, and what we find is that normally it's the independents off the main drag.
The cheapest E10 fill on the M7 was selling for 96 cents per litre in Sydney's southwest, whereas the most expensive was sitting at $1.17 in Sydney's west. That's a 21-cent difference, which means a driver could save almost $10 filling up at a cheaper service station. There's good news for motorists heading away for the school holidays. Petrol prices will drop to about $1 a litre across Sydney over the weekend.
The average will get to about $1.34 around the October long weekend.
So far this year, 42 petrol stations have been fined for not having the correct price at the Bowser and on the Field Check app.
The penalty can be quite substantial.
So shop around before you fill up. Amna Yang for 10 News First.
Stay with us after the break. Heartfelt pleas for help. A Senate committee hears from Australians stuck abroad and desperate. A mother and baby hit by a falling car after it veered off this cliff face. A family terrorised, their home burnt down in a suspected arson attack. A fighting chance for small business, the law changes to help them survive. And the little boy who wound up in a sticky situation trapped in a lolly tin.
I went straight to the bank. I said, if you don't give me a loan on the spot, I'll walk. It's the only way.
There are other ways.
With an Aussie broker, you can access more than 3,000 products from over 20 lenders. Go straight to Aussie.
Good evening. Not looking good through Eastern Creek. We've got a car broken down for Wargrove Road. It's heading southbound and sitting in the left lane at the moment. Moving across to Winston Hills, we had an earlier multi-vehicle accident for the M2 heading westbound just past Windsor Road. Still seeing plenty of westbound delays tracking all the way back past Pennant Hills Road and into North Epping now. And if you're heading through Granville, we're seeing a heavy outbound run for Parramatta Road tonight. I'm Marina Ivanovic in the Aussie Home Loans Traffic Chopper.
Rescue crews rarely attend a scene this freakish. A car plunged off a sheer cliff at Newcastle this morning, hitting a mum and her baby below. It sent dozens of witnesses and emergency workers racing to their aid.
It's a jaw-dropping fall 25 metres off a cliff face, but even more heart-stopping when you realise who this car hit on the beach below. A baby who was being cradled by his mum as Dad had a swim.
Dad was also at the beach and he was in the water at the time of the incident, so he saw it all happen.
The Volkswagen rammed through the car park barriers at Newcastle's Bar Beach just before 10:30 this morning.
And all of a sudden, this car go, it was airborne, and it just hit, it heard a bang, and she just airborne, she went straight over the edge.
Off-duty doctors swimming nearby were among the first to help. The 32-year-old female driver...
They got her out of the car and she was in pain, you could see it.
The 40-year-old mum suffered a possible leg fracture. Remarkably, her child only had minor scratches. But as Dad provided comfort, paramedics were understandably comforting him too.
Very lucky. I've seen people not survive a fall of that. After 11 years in the crash unit, I'm very surprised that we've got these minor injuries involved in this incident.
An army of rescue workers pulled together, getting the injured off the beach.
Yeah, we responded to an ambulance rescue helicopter, four-wheel drive and multiple intensive care paramedics.
There's unconfirmed reports a male passenger was in the vehicle. Anyone with dash cam footage should contact police. Ali Donaldson for 10 News First.
A Senate committee has heard harrowing tales from Australians stuck abroad on how the pandemic has torn families apart and left some facing homelessness. There are still 35,000 citizens trying to get home, with many saying that they feel they've been abandoned.
From heartbreak and exhaustion...
It's complete madness. It's absolute madness. They are not stranded. They are abandoned by the government.
...to pure frustration.
You said you've helped some people get home. Who do I have to suck up to get my ticket validated?
The Senate's COVID-19 committee has heard firsthand from Aussies who are either stuck overseas or fighting to bring loved ones home.
But it just feels like a long-term boyfriend cheating on me. I've given my life to Australia, and in my time of need, they have dumped me.
Deanne and Paul Valdes took their 5 children to the UK for what was meant to be a 5-week trip. 6 months, 2 cancelled flights and 1 eye-watering offer later, they're still stranded.
These were offered to us at a cost of $10,000 each, so that would have cost us $70,000.
Business class would have cost them $120,000.
And then we got the advice, send your children home without us.
The committee told about parents who are separated from their children.
The children who don't recognise their father anymore, right?
Emergency travel loans are available, up to $5,000 for a family.
The government support package to help people maintain their living overseas is disgusting. It's an insult to the citizens.
When you're left with an Australian passport, which I thought meant everything, I'm part of the lucky country, and to find out it was worthless was shattering. It was heartbreaking.
Department officials told the hearing they're doing everything they can to help, and there's currently 20,000 free seats on planes coming back into Australia every week. The trouble, they say, is the hotel quarantine caps set by the states.
Do your bloody job, for God's sake.
Tegan George for 10 News First.
Up next, the bankruptcy lifeline for struggling small business. The UK records a new COVID case explosion as its second wave gathers speed. And a boy's curiosity leads to a big operation after climbing into a lolly tin. But first, here's Josh Holt with a look at today's weather.
Good evening, Sandra. Well, I hope you haven't packed away the winter woolies just yet. It's set to get cold across New South Wales and also Sydney. Here is the system. A cold front arriving on Friday, sending in showers, snow, small hail and even thunderstorms and damaging winds. Now, that snow line could dip down to 700 metres across areas of the Alps, and we could see it dip down to 900 metres across the central tablelands, and some of that snowfall could even make it all the way northwards to the Barrington Tops. Can you believe it? Very unusual for this time of year. We'll have a look at that system a little bit later in the bulletin. Temperatures today were quite nice. Newcastle at 23 degrees, 28 at the top in Lismore and 14 degrees in Wagga. Across Sydney, we hit 22 degrees in the city, 2 above average for this time of year. The same mark recorded at Gosford this afternoon and Bankstown. Parramatta hit 23, 21 the top in Richmond and 11 at Katoomba. But of course, that cold front is fast approaching. I'll have all those details coming up at 5 to 6.
2 US police officers have been shot in Louisville, Kentucky, where black woman Breonna Taylor was mistakenly killed by police during a drug raid in March. Her name has become synonymous with the Black Lives Matter movement. But today a grand jury opted not to charge the police involved. Our US correspondent Eamon Ashton Atkinson reports on the fury that decision has sparked.
It began as fireworks.
They're shooting guns at them, real guns.
But then the bangs became gunshots, with a protester firing at police.
Right there, officer down, right there. Officer down, yes.
The shootout was live streamed by the Louisville Police Department as 2 officers were shot.
One is in alert and stable. The other officer is currently undergoing surgery.
All of this because a grand jury refused to charge 2 policemen for killing black woman Breonna Taylor in March.
This is why we are angry.
Back then, the 26-year-old was sleeping in her apartment when police accidentally shot her during a drug raid.
Somebody kicked in the door and shot my girlfriend.
The officers involved won't face charges because her boyfriend fired at them first.
Sometimes the law, the criminal law, is not adequate to respond to a tragedy.
How much is a black woman's life worth?
In recent months, Breonna Taylor's name has become a call to action, bringing protesters and right-wing militia onto the streets as tensions today boiled over. Hours after the grand jury results were announced, protesters began gathering in major cities right across the US, including here in Washington. They were told to bring gas masks, shields and helmets, preparing for things to get ugly. And they did. There were clashes in New York City and tear gas in Atlanta, mass arrests in Austin, and more black men pinned down in Vegas. And against this backdrop, Donald Trump refused to commit to a peaceful transition of power.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
As America's own reckoning at the ballot box approaches. Eamon Ashton-Atkinson for 10 News First, Washington.
It has taken 9 months, but America's top infectious diseases expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has finally lost his cool. It happened during a fiery Senate hearing on the US COVID response. The normally calm Fauci reacted angrily to claims by a Republican senator that New York has achieved herd immunity.
Please, sir, I would like to be able to do this because this happens with Senator Rand all the time. You were not listening. In New York, it's about 22%. If you believe 22% is herd immunity, I believe you're alone in that.
It came on the day the US recorded another 1,000 COVID deaths, taking its toll to 201,000. The news just keeps getting worse for the UK, with the country recording more than 6,000 new COVID cases, its third highest 24-hour total on record. A range of new restrictions have just come into effect, but the government is under pressure over a shortage of testing in some areas.
It's a national scandal that we still don't have a testing system that works or a plan to protect our care homes.
Britain's Chancellor is set to announce a new economic support plan tonight amid fears the new restrictions will trigger a surge in unemployment. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is now lying in repose at the US Supreme Court, greeted and brought in by 100 of her former clerks. Thousands are expected to pay their respects over the next 2 days. Hundreds already have included former President Bill Clinton. This little girl came to lay a flower for the justice dressed in her Superwoman costume. After 2 days of public viewing, Ginsburg will be taken to the Capitol, where she will become the first woman to lie in state there. At least 28 people have been killed and dozens more injured after a gas tanker exploded in Nigeria. The truck driver reportedly lost control, slamming into 5 cars, 3 tricycles and 2 motorbikes across the road from a petrol station. No one in those vehicles survived, but a child bystander did and was rushed to hospital with serious injuries. Stay with us after the break. The court ruling that has Qantas in hot water over its use of JobKeeper payments. A mother and her children forced from their burning home. Police suspect was purposely set alight. And the little boy who sparked a big rescue operation because of his love of Chupa Chups.
I went straight to the bank. I said, if you don't give me a loan on the spot, I'll walk. It's the only way.
There are other ways.
With an Aussie broker, you can access more than 3,000 products from over 20 lenders. Go straight to Aussie.
Good evening. It is all happening on the M2 tonight. We had an earlier accident through Winston Hills heading westbound just past Windsor Road, causing extensive delays through to North Epping. Now another multi-vehicle accident through Epping now westbound as well, tracking those delays back through to Macquarie Park. Moving across to Georges Hall, extensive westbound delays for Newbridge Road. It's from an earlier oil spill with delays all the way back through to Milperra now. I'm Marina Ivanovic in the Aussie Home Loans Traffic Chopper.
Good evening, Charlotte Goodlett with your finance news. The big story today is the biggest fine ever issued in Australian corporate history. Westpac reaching a settlement with financial crime watchdog AUSTRAC over more than 23 million breaches of anti-money laundering laws. The big bank will pay $1.3 billion. That's almost double the previous record that was set in 2018 when Commonwealth Bank was forced to pay $700 million. Westpac had originally offered to settle for $900 million, a sum that Attorney General Christian Porter today called totally inadequate. Well, Westpac wasn't the only company today looking at a big payday. Qantas might have to back pay hundreds of workers who could be due thousands of dollars after the federal court determined the airline had wrongly used JobKeeper to cover overtime payments. The airline is considering an appeal. Let's see what effect this all had on the markets. In Westpac's case, stocks initially fell by more than 2%, but by the close, they were only down 2 cents. The market overall, it really had a horror start. It slipped 1.7% at the open. However, it ended down just 48 points. That's about 0.8%. The biggest declines that were seen on the market were in tech stocks, Afterpay down by close to 6%. Gold and mining stocks, well, they suffered too. The Aussie dollar, it didn't have a great day either. It tumbled to a 2-month low, and right now it's buying just over 70 US cents.
Tonight's top stories, hugs all round as the New South Wales-South Australia border reopens and some of the restrictions on weddings, schools and kids' sport are being eased. A mother and her baby on a Newcastle beach are lucky to be alive after a car plunged off a cliff above them. And a $1.3 billion record fine handed to Westpac for millions of anti-money laundering law breaches. A mother and her 2 daughters have narrowly escaped with their lives, forced to run from their burning home. It was sparked after a firebomb was thrown through a bedroom window belonging to one of the children.
Flames burst through the windows of this bedroom. It belongs to a little girl, but she'd chosen to sleep in her sister's room instead.
Thankfully she did, because if she didn't, she probably wouldn't be here today.
Kelly Kane and daughters Samantha and Kaya returned to their charred home today to collect what they could.
Gone, completely gone, everything's gone. We don't really have anything.
The girl's father, who doesn't live with them, says it's unfathomable that anyone could put young lives on the line.
And they targeted my family. They targeted my 40-year-old girl. And no.
A broken bottle from the front of the Sadler property has led police to believe the blaze was deliberately lit.
Well, we have reports of 2 people seen fleeing the scene.
Investigators and a 4-legged assistant in fire boots scoured the scene, trying to confirm the cause and what sparked a second flare-up out the back. Fearing the flames would spread, a neighbour ran to this home next door and woke the elderly woman inside. He then helped her out to the street as firefighters battled the blaze. The family is now staying nearby, undoubtedly feeling uneasy until police make any arrests. Paris Martin for 10 News First.
A curious little boy has come face to face with his heroes during a delicate rescue operation in Melbourne's northwest. The 4-year-old's mother was forced to call 000 after he became trapped inside a Chupa Chups tin.
Like a kid in a candy store, 4-year-old Alessio was happy to jump in a Chupa Chups tin. That was until
I was stuck.
Locked in by his own legs.
He went to crouch down, so his feet were flat against one side and his knees were jammed against the other side.
For 15 minutes, his mother pushed, pulled, wriggled and reefed, but he wouldn't come free, so she called the professionals.
They said, "Please fire or ambulance," and I said, "I don't know who I need, but my son is stuck in a Chupa Chup tin."
Within minutes, all 3 emergency services were on their doorstep.
Are you joking? No. Embarrassing.
We just scratched our head for a couple of minutes and thought, well, we can't just tip him upside down.
They pushed the tin inwards to form an oval and used a belt to release his legs.
He was quite distressed at the start, and then he calmed down and saw the humour in it and was saying that he was a jack-in-the-box.
Once he was free, Alessio and his siblings decided to give the Chupa Chups tin a bit of a makeover. They crushed it even further and then painted it to ensure no one would get stuck in the tin again.
He lost a toy tin, but found a future career. Little Alessio is now sure he wants to be a firefighter.
After they all left, he went straight to the toy room and he grabbed his police truck, his fire truck and his ambulance and his little fire suit.
And yes, he still likes Chupa Chups. Jade Kottig for 10 News First.
Matt Burke is here now with a look at the day in sport. And Matt, the Rugby Championship schedule has been announced and the Kiwis, well, they're not happy.
Yeah, that's right, Sandra. They've claimed to have been blindsided by the dates. We'll have the details next. Plus, while other teams are resting players, the Roosters are throwing everything into the final round. And no luck with the ball in the IPL, but Pat goes whack with the bat. Good evening. The Roosters have primed Sonny Bill Williams for the finals and believe they're on track for a premiership three-peat. While he's set for more game time, Benji Marshall has said goodbye to his Tigers fans.
No rest for the Roosters this week. Unlike the Panthers, Raiders and Storm, they're throwing everything at their final round clash against South Sydney.
We know our path and we know what we've wanted to do and we've adapted on the run. We're ready to play tomorrow night with in a Roosters style again.
Boyd Cordner is set for his 11th match in a season competitiveness has had to take a back seat to concerns over concussions.
It's been preparation as normal for Boyd and ready to play.
None of us want to see our players have long-term health problems because of poor decisions that we make to win a game of football. I'm sure everything the Roosters do there, and I do, or here at South Sydney and other coaches do, is always the best welfare of the players, particularly with the head injuries.
Sonny Bill Williams' game time was up to 50 minutes against the Sharks. Trent Robinson wants him to aim for 80.
Just keep going, build the fitness, build the combinations. Let's get as much as we can in each game. And I've really liked everything that he's had to go through there.
Benji Marshall has thanked West Tigers for his second stint at the club, which ends on Saturday.
Whatever happens next, that's that. But I just want to enjoy this last game with my mates, and all the guys that I've spent the last 3 years with at the Tigers. I just want to say thank you for keeping me young. Although I'm probably the most immature out of everyone, but it's another story.
Marshall says the best part is that his son Fox got to see him play for the Tigers. Bence Hammerley for 10 News First.
Usually it's the Bledisloe Cup that provides the fireworks, but with today's announcement of the Rugby Championship schedule, that fight is now at board level. New Zealand claim the finishing date for the tournament was never agreed to, something Rugby Australia refute.
The Rugby Championship is finally a goer. 4 countries, 12 back-to-back tests over 6 weeks in Brisbane, Sydney and Newcastle.
It's going to be pretty unique. If we'd asked this question 6 months ago, whether we could have a centralised rugby championship, everyone would have laughed at us.
But the All Blacks certainly aren't laughing. In fact, they're downright furious.
Playing on the 12th, we haven't agreed to that. So that's something we need to take some more time and to work through over the next little while.
The match he's referring to is Bledisloe Cup number 4, December 12 in Sydney. A decision that blindsided the 3-time world champs, forcing them into compulsory quarantine for Christmas.
The other teams will have the benefit of all being home with their families for Christmas. And we're hoping that people acknowledge that that's a serious issue for us.
And they're pointing the finger fair and square at Rugby Australia, who they believe reneged on a prior agreement. But maybe it's the Kiwis being difficult.
Look, a little bit surprised because SANS are the body that deals with all of the member unions, and they've announced it. So I was a little bit surprised.
There's now sure to be plenty of feeling when the tournament begins with a double header in Brisbane, November 7, featuring world number 1 South Africa and Argentina. Then the 3rd Bledisloe Cup match.
I don't think there's going to be any extra spice. I think there's spice every year between the Kiwis and the Wallabies. So it's always a heated game.
Dave Rennie's got to sort of nurture that, and us are sort of against them. People aren't probably really giving us a chance to have a crack given the youth.
A 17-year series losing streak might have something to do with it too. Josh McLean for 10 News First.
By the time Pat Cummins went out to bat, it was a lost cause for his Calcutta Knight Riders in the IPL. But he did belt 4 sixes off one Jasprit Burma over.
That's high, and that could be more runs, could it? 6 of them. Wow!
He took 27 off that one over, but was dismissed for 33 by fellow Aussie James Pattinson, who claimed 2 wickets. Cummins struggled with the ball with figures of none for 49 off 4 as the Mumbai Indians got the win. Kai Havertz has started repaying Chelsea, who forked out $131 million for him this month. The German scored a hat-trick in a 6-0 win over Barnsley in the Carabao Cup.
Havertz goes through the middle. Here comes the goalkeeper again. And Havertz is in for a hat-trick. His first senior hat-trick. Chelsea's record signing, in for a treble.
And Leicester gave Arsenal a helping hand in getting to 4th round, with the Gunners getting up 2-0. Meanwhile, Newcastle scored its biggest ever win away, blasting 7 past Morecambe. The Miami Heat are just 1 win away from the NBA Finals after beating the Celtics 112 to 109 in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Tyler Hero finished with a game-high 37 points, the most ever by a rookie in a conference finals game.
I mean, I feel good about it. You know, there's a lot of work to be done. Still, you know, we're up 3-1. A big win for us tonight. You know, we felt like we could have won Game 3. Came out with more energy tonight.
Game 5 is on Sunday morning our time, and Sandra, a little later on, it's down to 2 for the Broncos coaching job. Should be good.
We might know soon enough. Thanks, Matt. Stay with us. Up next, restrictions eased and borders opened. Our latest wins in our fight against the pandemic. And shopping till we drop, Australia Post reveals a dramatic increase in demand. Stay with us.
Good evening. Well, the advice from the weatherman on this Thursday evening is pretty simple. Head to the cupboard, find the biggest jacket you can find, maybe even grab the Ugg boots, because a cold pool of Antarctic air is going to surge across New South Wales over the next couple of days. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But before it does arrive, we have seen some beautiful weather. 22 degrees, the top for Sydney today, 2 above average. The northwester strengthening at the airport to around about 50 kilometres per hour today. It'll be strengthening a lot faster than that, though, as this system approaches. Now, it comes in the form of a cold front, and the front is actually that band of cloud you can see there pushing through South Australia and western areas of Victoria. In behind it, you can see all this speckled cloud. Now, that is a cold pool of Antarctic air which will surge further northwards over the next 48 hours. So here's the frontal system pushing into New South Wales during Friday. You've got that southwesterly or southerly airstream in behind it, driving in that cold air. Now, the result of all of this, we're going to see widespread showers across the southern half of the state. But let's take a closer look at this cold blast as it moves through. It'll bring with it the possibility of small hail and also snowfall down to 800 metres across the southern ranges, even down to 900 metres across the central tablelands. And let me tell you, this snow could surge as far northwards as the Barrington Tops, which is absolutely unbelievable for this time of year. And as you can see here, plenty of winds, and we could see those get to the damaging category in the higher elevated areas. In fact, a severe weather warning has been issued for alpine areas. So, the rainfall tomorrow, the southern half of the state will see the best of it, including parts of the southwest slopes, the southern inland, the south coast, and especially across parts of the Divide. That is where most likely we'll see the best of the falls tomorrow. As mentioned, small hail a possibility and even the odd thunderstorm. Melbourne will see rain tomorrow as well, topping out at 12 degrees. Showers for Adelaide and 14. A shower or storm for Perth hitting 24 as a trough low pressure moves across the southwest of WA. And showers and storms on the way for Darwin with tops of 33. So showers right across the southern half of New South Wales, in particular around the southern inland, western slopes of the southern and central ranges tomorrow. Cooler temperatures as well, 11 degrees, the maximum forecast for Wagga. But let me tell you, with the wind chill factor, that 11 degrees will feel more like 6 or 7 degrees. So it's going to be a cold one. 10 degrees for Canberra, 19 for Bega. A little bit warmer ahead of that change up through the northeastern New South Wales. 29 the top for Coffs and 30 degrees for Lismore. Into the Sydney Basin, it will be a nice day before that change arrives, although those winds from the northwest will start to pick up ahead of the frontal system itself. 24 the top for Penrith, with a shower or two developing later in the day. 24 as well for Parramatta and Bankstown. 25 for Gosford and 23 with a shower developing for Wollongong. For Sydney City, a shower or two, as mentioned, a little bit later in the day. It will become quite windy. 25 the top for the city, 5 above average. and then those temperatures will drop dramatically, down to 19 degrees Saturday, 18 on Sunday and 19 Monday. Staying dry Tuesday next week with a top 21 degrees as those temperatures slowly but surely start to increase once again. For the western suburbs, we're looking at a shower or two, becoming windy tomorrow, 24 degrees, 18 mostly sunny on Saturday, and then partly cloudy Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. We're looking at 22 degrees Wednesday next week, overcast skies, but plenty of weather on the way. More details on that coming up shortly in the bulletin.
Tonight's top stories, hugs all round as the New South Wales-South Australia border reopens and some of the restrictions on weddings, schools and kids' sport are being eased. A mother and her baby on a Newcastle beach are lucky to be alive after a car plunged off a cliff above them. And a $1.3 billion record fine handed to Westpac for millions of anti-money laundering law breaches. There have been hugs and tears as families separated by COVID border restrictions reunited after 6 months apart. And residents in New South Wales and Queensland are celebrating tonight too, with a swathe of restrictions on crucial parts of life relaxed.
The first flight in, a granddad's first kiss.
I didn't think I'd cry, but it just came.
And the hugs. 6 months in the making.
Oh, I'm overwhelmed.
As the passengers poured out, Denise Pride was scanning the crowd for her grandson. Little Luca is 8 months old.
It's very precious. I'm a bit shaky. I'm so excited.
It's the first time he's met his Adelaide clan.
Seen plenty of shots of him and movies, but hey.
The flight nearly full, just hours after the border reopened.
We won't let them down. We'll do everything we can in New South Wales to make sure we keep the virus under control.
New South Wales today clocked up 3 days in a row with no community transmission. But late last night, a new case ended that streak. A man in his 50s, now in intensive care.
The source of the infection is under investigation.
Still, the government today scrapped the one-parent rule for the sidelines of kids' sport.
As long as they practice social distancing.
At weddings, the bride and groom can now dance with their entire bridal party, up to 20 people. In schools, Term 4 will see the return of camps and excursions, orientation day and school music groups. Choirs are back on, but only with groups of up to 5. And on New Year's Eve, the fireworks the City of Sydney wanted to cancel were today given new life by the Premier.
I can confirm that it will be a very short display just at midnight.
The safe place to watch, she says, is on TV. Daniel Sutton for 10 News First.
Further COVID restrictions are about to be lifted in Queensland too. From tomorrow, visitors will be allowed back into aged care facilities and hospitals across Brisbane and Ipswich. The cap on private gatherings has also been raised from 10 people to 30. It's now been 2 weeks since any community transmission has been linked to the detention centre outbreak.
I'll be honest with you all, I thought we'd have a lot more cases than 55.
Queensland also reopens to the ACT from 1 a.m. tomorrow. The federal government has already begun selling the budget that's still 12 days away. And in his first big pre-budget speech today, the Treasurer made it clear that recovering from COVID is going to take some radical thinking. Here's our political editor, Peter Van Onselen.
No promised budget surplus and a record-breaking deficit means Australia needs a
revised fiscal strategy.
The budget Josh Frydenberg will hand down in less than a fortnight
will deal with a recession like no other in living memory.
The Treasurer telling a business audience we need to
recalibrate our approach.
But what exactly does that mean? The speech started with a brag.
Our actions to date have served to cushion the blow from the immediate impacts of this shock.
Less so for the million casuals who missed out on JobKeeper.
Is a real deer in the headlights. He's got no idea and he's got no ideas.
We've been able to respond quickly and decisively because we had the fiscal firepower to do so.
Despite the coalition doubling the national debt since coming to power.
It's a next generation team.
But today's speech wasn't a trip down memory lane. As 10 News First revealed last night, the Treasurer announced new insolvency provisions to protect businesses from going belly up. Josh Frydenberg sticking to the script.
We will introduce a single simpler, faster, more cost-effective insolvency process for small business.
These announcements for small business come at the same time as the Treasurer gets ready to withdraw billions of dollars in support.
To date, we have announced $314 billion in support, or around 15.8% of GDP.
Today's speech really was light on detail, but the budget on October 6th won't be. And that's when we'll find out just how big the deficit really is. Peter Van Onselen for 10 News First.
A young father has been killed in a brutal stabbing on the Gold Coast. 4 people are now behind bars, and officers say it's time to crack down on knife violence.
Hunted down, set upon and stabbed to death. Raymond Harris's terrifying final moments played out in brazen fashion on a Gold Coast tourist strip.
We looked over and saw a big commotion and a guy laying on the floor, bleeding out. A man with a knife like this big or something just came and, yeah.
The 27-year-old didn't stand a chance, ambushed from behind by a gang of men he knew around 9 o'clock last night.
This is just a group of young idiots who think it's cool to enforce their will by using knives. And I can't stress it enough. You know, I'd use some more colourful language, but it wouldn't hit the air. I mean, they're complete idiots.
2 of which now face the prospect of life behind bars. Jared Miller and Jai Webatalia charged with murder.
This is the consequences of carrying knives. It might be cool, it might be tough, but there's no turning back. We've got a family now that have lost a loved one.
The young father is being mourned. I'll never be able to handle the fact my little girl will never get to see her daddy again. Rest in peace. You will be missed. It was the second stabbing on Cavill Avenue in just 17 hours. A teenage girl allegedly attacked a man with a pocket knife, leaving him with serious injuries.
This gangster attitude has to stop. We've had enough.
John Paul Gonzo for 10 News First.
One of the longest and most expensive criminal trials in Australian history has come to an end. Bradley Robert Edwards today revealed as Western Australia's Claremont killer. The 51-year-old was convicted of murdering 2 women in the 90s, but acquitted of killing a third.
An enigma of the dark finally unmasked. Bradley Robert Edwards today convicted as the Claremont killer.
I am satisfied, beyond reasonable doubt, that the accused was the killer of Miss Rimmer and Miss Glennon.
After a mammoth 7-month trial and 3 months of deliberation, Justice Stephen Hall finally closed the notorious cold case murders which have haunted Perth for more than 20 years.
Bradley Edwards can now be called for what he is, a brutal rapist and a murderer.
The 51-year-old convicted of abducting, killing and dumping the bodies of 23-year-old Jane Rimmer and 27-year-old Kira Glennon after nights out in the wealthy suburb of Claremont in 1996 and 97.
At one point I thought he was going to be not guilty, but no, we got the result we wanted. And now we just have to keep working for the Spears family and hope someone finds Sarah.
18-year-old Sarah Spears was the first woman to vanish from Claremont after a night out in January 1996. Her family today left with no answers. The judge unable to say without reasonable doubt Edwards is her killer. There were emotional scenes inside the courtroom after the verdict was handed down. The police commissioner was the first to console the families, first hugging Don and Carol Spears as Sarah's mother broke down.
We will never give up trying to locate Sarah, and I've conveyed that to Don and Carol Spears today and to Amanda. Sarah and her family deserve justice.
And this is to Mr. Edwards. If you know where Sarah Spears is, can you please tell us? Can you please tell us? Can you please provide some closure to the Spears family?
Bradley Robert Edwards will be sentenced in December. Jessica Brown for 10 News First.
2 women and a baby are receiving treatment in hospital after a car drove off a 25-metre cliff and then crashed onto a Newcastle beach this morning. Emergency services were called to Bar Beach at around 10:30, finding the car on the sand and a 40-year-old woman and her child injured nearby.
Then all of a sudden, this car go, it was airborne.
Very lucky. I've seen people not survive a fall of that.
After 11 years in the crash unit, I'm very surprised that we've got these minor injuries involved in this incident.
Mum and Bub are being treated for minor injuries. The 32-year-old driver will undergo mandatory testing. To some news just in, and a man has been attacked by a crocodile in far north Queensland. It's believed he was bitten on the head and neck while snorkelling in Anchor Bay, offshore from Lizard Island Resort late yesterday afternoon. The man was flown to Cairns Hospital, where he's being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Westpac has been hit by a record fine of $1.3 billion after admitting to 23 million breaches of regulations. The bank failed to report a slew of suspect financial transactions linked to child exploitation, money laundering and potentially the financing of terrorism.
But Westpac has done the wrong thing by Australians here. The most egregious breaches here can result in the loss of human life or serious consequences, particularly and including for children.
Westpac boss Peter King released a statement today apologising for the bank's failings. In the United States, 2 police officers are tonight recovering in hospital after being shot during a Black Lives Matter rally in Louisville, Kentucky. That's where black woman Breonna Taylor was mistakenly shot dead by police during a drug raid on her home in March. Today, protesters reacted with fury to a grand jury's decision not to charge the police involved over her death.
If we simply act on emotion or outrage, there is no justice. Justice sought by violence is not justice. It just becomes revenge.
The decision also sparked major protests, some of them violent, in dozens of cities across the US. Stay with us. Up next, our online shopping habits on show, a dramatic increase over the past few months. In sport, it's down to 2 for the vacant top job at the Broncos. And the underhanded tactics some will go to win a match.
It just rained fire.
There's nothing left.
And there was flames all over it.
10 News First Person. Available now on 10 Speaks or wherever you get your podcasts.
No surprise, really. Australians have set a new shopping record, and it's not for panic buying toilet paper. A survey's revealed August 2020 was the biggest month in Australian online shopping history. Lockdown Victorians turned to retail therapy the most, with 5 postcodes dominating the national purchasing race. The state's online shopping has grown by 170% compared to 85% across the rest of the country. More sport now with Matt Burke and Matt. Some familiar faces in line for Anthony Seibold's old job.
Yeah, that's right, Sandra. Good evening. And Kevin Walters concedes he's learnt from the last time he was overlooked for the Broncos coaching job. It's down to 2 with the Maroons' mentor and former Cowboys coach Paul Green officially interviewed for the position this afternoon.
This is one way to do interview prep. Kevin Walters hopeful he'll be downing celebration schooners after his interview with the Broncos board.
Put a lot of work into myself over the last 15 years to be a coach, and that's what I want to be.
Overlooked for the job in 2018 in favour of Anthony Seibold, Walters is now up against former Cowboys coach Paul Green.
Sort of a different process this time around, so we just get in and have a crack and just be myself. I feel that's the best way to present myself, is to be me.
I know them extremely well, both candidates, and whoever they decide to go with, they won't lose, that's for sure.
A tough season for both sides ends tonight in a 14th v 16th derby.
Just because they're sitting where they are on the ladder doesn't mean they're not going to turn out tonight. Both teams have got a lot to play for.
As Darius Boyd closes the chapter on his NRL career.
I think he's had a great career. I think he's been a wonderful player in our game. Look at his record. It stands up there with the best of them.
With 1 game to go, Justin Holbrook's men shouldn't start planning their holidays just yet. The Titans coach frustrated with the Players Association push for more than 7 weeks off.
There's talk of them having a longer break than usual, which I think is ridiculous. The game's getting quicker and people are getting more injured due to not being up to speed with the game.
Veronica Eggleton for 10 News First.
Benji Marshall says even if he joins another team next season, the West Tigers will always stay in his heart. The 35-year-old finishes his 2nd stint with the club on Saturday when they take on Parramatta.
As my last game ever in a West Tigers jumper approaches this weekend,
Just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all. Even though I won't be at the club next year, I'll forever be a part of this club's history, and the club will forever be a part of mine.
Marshall has played 256 games for the Tigers and is keen to play on in the NRL. Richmond will have to make a tough call on midfielder Dion Prestia for next week's AFL qualifying final against the Brisbane Lions. The 27-year-old hasn't played in more than 2 months, but is pushing hard for a finals recall.
Dion Prestia didn't miss a beat today, taking every opportunity to impress.
He needs every day that he can get, but we're expecting he'll be thereabouts.
Several stars today call in their jets, but tomorrow's main training will be crucial, with a planned scratch match on Saturday cancelled. Prestia hasn't played since round 5 when he had surgery on a syndesmosis injury that subsequently became infected.
He just needs to move freely, move like he does. He's a great transition midfielder for us, and we want to see him just move, cover the ground like he does. And if he ticks that box and we're satisfied with it, then we'll proceed with it.
Hamstrung teammate Tom Lynch was nowhere to be seen. He won't be tested until next week.
So far it seems pretty good, but again, they're a bit hard to predict, hamstrings. They tend to recover quite quickly and then take a little bit of time.
The Lions are confident Harris Andrews will be fit, but most of their wounds are above the shoulders. They were knocked out by the Tigers in the qualifying final last season, and they can't escape their decade-long hoodoo, even in the Sunshine State.
I'll be getting a coffee and a fair tells me what I should be doing, but yeah, certainly everyone's been given their 2 cents, that's for sure.
And we suspect Hipwood may have got more than 2 cents worth after this baffling and bizarre blunder against the Blues.
Not a player wearing the same jumper had any clue what he was doing.
That wasn't a spray, to believe it or not. My body language didn't look great. It was more so just a discussion around it. He said I probably could have had a shot. I was trying to pass it and I miskicked the ball.
Katie Price for 10 News First.
And Tampa Bay regained its leader on the ice and then went about seizing a Stanley Cup Series advantage. Steve Stamkos played his first game in 211 days and scored with his first shot.
My goodness, right out of a storybook.
The Lightning's captain's comeback lasted only just minutes, with another injury keeping him out for the rest of Game 3. Tampa defeated Dallas 5-2 and now lead the series 2-1. Now, some might call it an underhand tactic. Others might call it an underrated way to win a point. But for Kazakhstani player Alexander Bublik, his underarm ace in the second round of the ATP Tour event in Hamburg didn't fly under the radar with us. And for the record, he went on to win the match against Canadian young gun Felix Auger-Aliassime. So Bublik's sleight of hand certainly earns him our play of the day. And I think he stole that from the handbook of Nick Kyrgios. Sandra?
You could be right. Thanks, Matt. Up next, we've got your Friday forecast sorted with the night of the weekend. So stay with us.
The wintry weather is back in a big way across New South Wales over the next couple of days. Here it is on screen, a cold front moving into New South Wales during the early hours of Friday morning. In behind it, a cold pool of Antarctic air, which will drop down temperatures dramatically. Also providing plenty of snowfall across the southeast ranges, even falling across parts of the central tablelands of New South Wales, and astonishingly getting as far north as the Barrington Tops, which is quite unusual for this time of year. Along with that, we're expecting some strong winds, especially for the alpine areas where severe weather warnings have been issued for damaging winds, possibly exceeding 100 kilometres per hour. And also showers are on the way right across the southern half of the state tomorrow, in particular around areas of the southern inland and the western slopes of the southern and central ranges. So with those winds as well, tracking in behind that cold front, the wind chill factor will play a major role as we get through tomorrow. So 11 degrees the top for Wagga, probably feeling more like 6 or 7 degrees tomorrow. Canberra getting down to 2 degrees overnight, 10 through the afternoon, and 19 for Bega. A lot warmer in the northeast of New South Wales ahead of the change itself. As we take a look at Sydney, those temperatures not looking too bad because it'll be ahead of the change where the warm air is. In behind it is where the cold stuff is. 24 degrees for Penrith tomorrow, hitting the same mark in Parramatta and Bankstown. But once that change moves through, temperatures will drop. And as the frontal system moves through the Sydney basin, that is when we do have the chance of a shower or two. 25 the top for the city tomorrow, and then those temperatures dropping down on Saturday. 19 degrees 18 on Sunday and 19 on Monday. But out in those westerly winds, it will feel a lot colder than that. For Friday in the west, we're looking at 24 degrees, a shower or two, becoming windy through the day. 18 and mostly sunny on Saturday and partly cloudy skies on Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. So the advice, as mentioned earlier tonight from the weatherman, grab that jumper over the next couple of days as those temperatures are set to plunge.
And that is 10 News First for this Thursday, the 24th of September. Stand by now for the team at the project. They're up next. But from the news team here, thanks for your company tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget, same time, same channel. See you then. Cheers.